Okay, welcome back to part 2 of our video presentation. What I've got here on the screen is my folder structure, and I wanted to show this to you guys because when you create your project, you want to make sure things are in the right place. And what you see here is my folder on my desktop, which I call Juneberry Solution. And then what I did is I put my solution inside that folder. So if I go into it, you'll notice I have Juneberry. That's where my project files are all located. If I go up a level, here's my solution file, and this is a folder that got created by Visual Studio. Now when it comes time to submit your work, you'll want to turn in this piece and this piece, but not the packages. You won't need the packages folder because it'll automatically download it on my machine. So it's a big folder. I mean, if you look at the size of it, it's about 70 megs worth of stuff that you don't have to package up and submit. Blackboard will be much happier, in fact, if you don't. So I just wanted to show you that to begin with so you could see how my project is set up. Okay, so the next step in the process here is to follow or use the design framework that I have listed here. And we talked about this in class, but basically just to sort of recap this, you have two entities in the program that you want to work with, players and teams. So in the application, we have two controllers, players and teams. These should be kept in plural case here. And so we have these controllers. Now, when you think about players, what are all the different actions that you would want to do with the players? One is to show all of them. 2, create a new one. 3, edit an existing one. 4, whether you create a new one or edit, you need the ability to save what you've done, and then the ability to delete a player. So you come up with a list of 5 different actions. So each one of these is built as an action method within the controller class. Same thing with the teams. Now each action has a corresponding view, typically, although not always the case. For example, here, if I'm going to call the index action method, I want to show a list of players. Well, that requires a view. And by default, the name of the view is the same as the name of the action method. Now, in the case of new and edit, it is true that new has a view, as does edit. But the thing with these is both new and edit can share the same view. And if you think about it, the view we're talking about is a bunch of text boxes, and the only difference between creating a new player and editing an existing one is whether or not there will be data appearing in those text boxes when the page first comes up. But the view is exactly the same for both, and so what we do here is we use the same view for both actions. And now for save and delete, they don't have a view. When you go to save your player, it does the save, and after that it's finished. And so what we do for save and delete is we redirect the user to the index view, which will show the added player or the removed player depending on which action you took. And this is exactly the same for teams as it is for players. Now I put some notes over on the right here just to show you what these things do. Now the index view for the players, we're going to have a table where we show the players. Each player's name will be a hyperlink, which when they click it will enable them to edit the player. We will also have a delete hyperlink next to each player so they can delete them. And then to create a player, we're going to put that as a button up in the navigation bar at the top of the web page, along with a link to show all the players as well as teams. So on our navigation bar, we are going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 different menu options or buttons, one for each of these cases. And when you click those links, they will route you to the appropriate controller and the action as you see here. And we'll get that set up here in a few minutes, but this is our framework. So before we get into the weeds here, let's go back and build our controller classes, which is going to be players and teams. So I'm going to come into the project. So I'm going to have to open the project up. And I moved it, so I have to open it in the new location, which is now Juneberry Solution. And there's the solution file. Okay, so the project is open, and we're going to go to the controllers folder. Now, right now there's a home controller. We're not going to need that, but we'll leave it there for now. But what we're going to do is right-click on the controllers folder and add a controller. We want to make sure it's empty, and you want to call this first one the players, plural, players with an S, controller. What it will do is scaffold a set of views. And if I go down, I notice in the views folder there's now a subfolder named players, which is because I made a players controller. I'm going to do this again, and I will add the teams controller. Now by default, the controllers get one action, which is called index, which is good. We want that. But we want more than that, so we'll do that here shortly. So we've created our controller classes. Now it says stub out actions in each controller. So what we'll do is we'll come into the teams controller and we'll put together an action method for each of these things: index, new, edit, save, and delete. Okay, so I'll return a view in the case of the new. Now for the edit, what I'll do for the edit is I'm going to assume that when they are editing, they're going to pass me an ID for the player that they're editing. And ultimately, I'm going to return a view. Same thing with the delete. They're going to pass me an ID for the player they wish to delete. Now here, I'm not going to return a view. What I'm going to do here is return a redirect to action. And the action I'm going to redirect them to is the index action of this controller, which is players. So when they delete a player, we're going to send them back to the index. And we'll do the same thing with the save action method. So we have that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, good. Now these are red because we don't have these views yet. And we're going to have to create them. But for now, we'll just leave this be. I'm going to take all of this code and I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go over to the player controller. And I'm going to add in the exact same code here. All I have to change is players over to team. I'm sorry, wait, I screwed up. Over in teams, these need to be called teams, not players. Oops. So the teams controller says index teams, and the players controller says index players. Okay, good. That's what we want. Okay. Next step, create view model folder along with empty classes. Okay, so we know we needed to build 1, 2, 3, 1. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4 view model classes. So I'm going to go to my project. I'm going to right click on the project folder and I'm going to select Add, New Folder, and I will choose View Models. And in that folder, I'm going to right click and select Add Class. And I will add my classes, which again will be Player Model, Player Form View Model. Actually, I'm going to change the names of these. This is actually, this should be Player View Model and Team View Model. I knew something wasn't right about those names. They're view models, so Player View Model, Team View Model. Okay, back we go here. Player View Model. Player Form View Model. Team View Model. Team Form View Model. Okay, done. Edit router config file so that the default controller action is player index instead of home index. Okay, in the app start folder, there is a file called route config. And what we want to do is open up that file and set it up so that the default route, instead of going to the home index, takes us to the player's controller index action. Now when we do this, we're essentially going to bypass completely the home controller. So I'm going to delete that out of the project, as well as the view, which I don't need that view anymore either. Now before I do that, yeah, let's blow it away. Why not? Okay. Okay, so now we're left with players and teams and a shared. So now what we want to do is go to the template file, which is under the views shared folder, there is a file called layout.cshtml. We're going to open that. And what we're going to do here is we're going to make some changes to the default or template of the program. So what we want to do here, at the top where the title of the web page will be, we want to get rid of the myasp.net application piece of that. So it just says vbag.title. Then what we want to do is under the body of the document, this entire section, I'm going to cut, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that in another file. I'm going to right click on shared and I'm going to say add view. This will be a partial view. I'm going to call my view underscore navbar, which is the default convention for partial views. And I'm going to then go to that view and paste my code that I had into this file. Okay, now I'm going to go here to application name and call that Juneberry. And the action link will be index, index, and then instead of home, we will choose players. In the navbar down here, what we're going to do is create or change these three. Actually, what we want are 4 of them like this. So we have something called new team that takes us to the team's controller, new action. Teams, which takes us to team's index. New player, which when clicked takes us to players new. And a players hyperlink, which takes us to players index. The order of these, I probably want to put players first. Doesn't really matter, but I'll do that. Then I'll put new player next, then teams, and then new team. I could even call this create player and create team if I wanted to be a little more precise. Okay, now this is our nav bar, so I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back over to the layout file, and what I'm going to do is where I had cut my code, I'm going to go back to it and paste an HTML helper tag that references that partial view and includes it. So what this is going to do is it's going to go over to the navbar view, partial view, take all this code here, and essentially copy it and paste it right here on line 11. The reason I do that is in case I want to reuse the navbar in different places. I now have broken it apart or broken it out of the layout view. Okay, the footer, I'm going to take my ASP.NET application and replace it with Juneberry. I'll say Juneberry Softball League. Let's say we call it that. And that should do it. I think we're good here. So we will save this and move on. Begin filling in classes and methods as desired. So basically at this point, we are ready to just start powering through this thing and building code. So basically the order that you do things from here on out isn't really that critical. I mean, you can get the controllers done. You could do the view models first, the views, it doesn't really matter. So I'll just kind of take it in a natural progression, and work our way through this, and we'll get the whole thing working and see where we land. So, but we'll save that for the next video for part 3. For now, I'll close this part 2 out, and we'll see you in the next part.